Good morning, Virgo. Uh, a person who has passed, whether recently or years ago, whether you were close to them or the relationship was complicated, is making their presence felt in ways you might have been dismissing as coincidence or imagination. And the message they're attempting to communicate carries weight that affects decisions you're making now, healing you're attempting, or patterns you're perpetuating that were connected to them or to unresolved grief around their loss. And the urgency isn't about them being in distress or needing something from you. It's about you needing what they're offering: permission, validation, release, information, closure that wasn't possible while they were alive. Let me be clear about what this message is in ISNT, because discussing deceased people requires sensitivity and grounding in psychological reality rather than just spiritual speculation. This ISN8 supernatural intervention where dead person is literally sending you coded messages through random events. That framework might resonate for some, but it's not only explanation for what you're experiencing. This is your psyche, your deepest knowing, your intuitive wisdom, your subconscious processing using memory and relationship with deceased person to communicate truths you need to integrate. Whether you interpret that as them speaking through you or as you accessing wisdom through their memory doesn't matter as much as receiving what's being communicated. The message is real, regardless of its metaphysical source. Your need for it is valid. The healing it offers is legitimate. Who this person is varies by individual, but certain patterns emerge. Parent who died before you had chance to resolve relationship with them, before you could say what needed saying, before you could receive apology you deserved, or give forgiveness they needed, or simply understand them as flawed human rather than as idealized or demonized figure. Grandparent who was significant in your childhood, who provided safety or love or stability that other relationships didn't provide, whose death created hole you haven't fully processed, sibling or close friend whose loss was traumatic, whose absence changed fundamental reality of your life, whose death you might feel guilty about surviving, partner or spouse whose death ended chapter of your life abruptly, leaving you with grief complicated by whatever unresolved issues existed in relationship, or even someone whose relationship with you was difficult or toxic, whose death prevented you from ever getting closure or confrontation or accountability you needed. Let's pause here. This reflection invites you to consider whose death has affected you in ways you haven't fully processed or acknowledged. Maybe you've told yourself you're over it because years have passed. But grief doesn't operate on timelines, and unresolved grief surfaces in unexpected ways through dreams, through triggers, through patterns you can't seem to break. Or maybe death was recent and you're still in active grief, still experiencing waves of loss, still adjusting to world without them in it. Or maybe you've been experiencing signs that you've dismissed, repeatedly seeing their name, thinking about them right before something significant happens, dreaming about them with unusual vividness, encountering objects or songs or places that connect to them at moments when you're facing decisions. Those aren't necessarily supernatural. They're your attention being drawn to unfinished business. your psyche saying, this matters and needs addressing. This reflection invites you to consider, what signs have you noticed that might be connected to deceased person? What message they're communicating, or what message your relationship with their memory is trying to communicate to you depends on your specific situation. Permission to live fully despite their death. Many people unconsciously limit themselves after loss, don't allow themselves joy because loved one can't experience joy. Don't pursue dreams because it feels like betrayal to thrive while they're gone. The message: I don't want my death to diminish your life. Live. Pursue happiness. Don't sacrifice yourself to honor my memory. Honoring me means living well, not living small. If this resonates, you're being released from obligation to suffer, from guilt about moving forward, from belief that grief means permanent diminishment. Validation of your experience with them, particularly if relationship was difficult and others didn't understand. Maybe parent who was abusive but publicly charming. Your grief is complicated because you're mourning what you needed from them that you never got, but others expect you to mourn who they were, which wasn't your experience. The message: your experience was real, your pain was valid. You don't have to pretend I was someone I wasn't just because I died. Complex feelings are allowed. If this resonates, you're being released from obligation to rewrite history, from pressure to forgive what shouldn't be forgiven, or to grieve in ways that don't honor your truth. Apology they couldn't give while alive either because they died before relationship could be repaired, or because they lacked capacity to take accountability even when alive. You needed them to acknowledge harm they caused, to take responsibility, to express regret. They died without providing that. The message: I understand now what I couldn't understand then. I'm sorry. You deserved better. My failure wasn't your fault. If this resonates, you're being offered closure that couldn't come from them directly. Whether you attribute this to their actual spirit or to your own wisdom doesn't matter. The healing is real. Forgiveness for how you treated them, or for unresolved guilt about relationship. Maybe you weren't there when they died. Maybe last conversation was argument. Maybe you were relieved when difficult person finally died and you feel guilty about that relief. The message: I forgive you, I understand. You did what you could with resources you had. Release the guilt. It serves neither of us. If this resonates, you're being released from self-punishment, from belief that you owe eternal guilt as payment for being imperfect in relationship with them. Guidance about decision you're facing that connects to values they embodied or lessons they tried to teach. Maybe you're at crossroads professionally, relationally, geographically, and you keep thinking, what would they say? Or what would they want for me? The message might be encouragement toward risk. Be brave. Take chance. Don't let fear limit you the way it limited me. Or message might be caution toward repetition. Don't make mistakes I made. Learn from my life. Choose differently. If this resonates, you're being offered wisdom distilled from their lived experience. Whether that's literally them communicating or your internalized understanding of their life lessons doesn't diminish value, release from pattern you inherited from them, addiction, relationship dysfunction, limiting belief, trauma response. The message, the pattern ends with you. You don't have to carry what I carried. You don't have to repeat what I couldn't escape. Break the cycle. If this resonates, you're being empowered to choose differently, to heal what they couldn't heal, to be free in ways they weren't free. This reflection invites you to consider. Which of these messages resonates most strongly? Permission, validation, apology, forgiveness, guidance, or release? How to receive this message. Practical steps that honor both psychological and spiritual dimensions. Create intentional space for processing, not just thinking about it passively, but actually engaging with what's unresolved. This could be writing letter to them, expressing everything you never got to say, everything you wish you'd said, everything you need them to know. Don't send it, obviously, burn it or keep it or destroy it. Process of writing is what matters, or speaking out loud to them in private space where you won't be interrupted, actually talking to them as if they're present, saying what needs saying, or visiting their grave or place that was significant to them, physically going to location that connects you to their memory, speaking or thinking your message there, or creating ritual that honors them while releasing you, lighting candle, playing their favorite music, looking at photos while acknowledging both love and pain, then consciously choosing to move forward. Listen for response, not necessarily audible voice, but feeling, intuition, sense of knowing. After expressing what you need to express, sit quietly. Notice what arises, what thoughts come, what feelings emerge, what clarity develops. That's their response, or more accurately, that's your deepest wisdom responding to your own expression. Either interpretation leads to same healing. Take action based on what you received. If message was permission to live fully, make choice that reflects that permission. If message was release from pattern, make change that breaks pattern. Don't just feel better temporarily. Let this catalyze actual transformation in how you live, how you relate, how you handle unresolved grief. This reflection invites you to consider what specific action would demonstrate you've received and integrated their message. Let me address grief that might be surfacing as you read this, because engaging with deceased person's message often activates grief that's been dormant or suppressed. Grief isn't linear, doesn't follow stages neatly, doesn't complete on schedule, and engaging with unfinished business can bring fresh waves even years after loss. If you're feeling sadness, longing, anger, regret, that's normal. That's grief doing its work. Don't suppress it. Don't judge yourself for still grieving someone who died years ago. Let yourself feel what's present. Cry if you need to cry. Rage if you need to rage. Laugh remembering them if that's what comes. Grief and healing aren't opposites. You can grieve someone and receive their message, can miss them and move forward, can love them and release patterns they passed to you. This isn't about getting over them. It's about integrating their loss in ways that serve your living. And if relationship was complicated, if you have mixed feelings about person who died, that complexity is allowed. You can miss them and be angry at them, can love them and acknowledge harm they caused, can grieve loss of who they could have been while accepting who they actually were. Grief doesn't require making them perfect, doesn't require pretending relationship was uncomplicated, allows full truth of your experience. This reflection invites you to consider, what emotion about this deceased person have you been suppressing or judging yourself for feeling? Why urgent matters, why this message is being emphasized now rather than being something you can address eventually. Timing often connects to current situation. Maybe you're facing decision that echoes pattern from their life. Maybe you're reaching age they were when something significant happened to them. Maybe anniversary of their death is approaching. Or maybe you're ready in ways you weren't ready before, healed enough to engage with this without being destroyed by it, strong enough to face what's unresolved, or maybe delay has cost you enough. Pattern you inherited has damaged relationships, limited opportunities, caused suffering, and continuing to avoid addressing it costs more than facing it would. Urgency isn't about fear, it's about readiness meeting necessity. You're ready, it's time. The cost of continuing to avoid is exceeding cost of engaging. You remain in complete control of whether you engage with this message or continue avoiding unresolved grief and unfinished business with deceased person. You can create space for processing or stay busy enough to avoid feeling. The power is yours. It always has been. You may notice reading this has brought specific person to mind with uncomfortable intensity, maybe tears surfacing, maybe tightness in chest, maybe resistance to engaging with what you know needs addressing. Whatever you're feeling, honor it. Take what resonates. Softly release the rest. Trust yourself. Before we close, I want to ask you something. Whose death has affected you in ways you haven't fully processed? And what do you imagine they would want you to know? Drop it in the comments if you're willing to share. And what action could you take this week to honor their memory while also releasing yourself from whatever pattern or guilt or limitation their death created? Someone who died wants you to know this. And whether you interpret that as literal spiritual communication or as your own deepest wisdom using their memory to convey truth, the message is real permission to live fully. Validation of your experience, apology they couldn't give, forgiveness for your imperfection, guidance for current decisions, or release from inherited patterns. And receiving that message requires creating intentional space to engage with unresolved grief and unfinished business instead of continuing to avoid what costs you more than facing it would not. Eventually, this week, create the space, have the conversation, write the letter, feel the feelings. Trust yourself with this trust that engaging with grief won't destroy you. Trust that unresolved business can be resolved even after death. Trust that their message, however you understand its source, serves your healing. Trust that honoring them means living well, not living small. See you in the next one. And listen, death ends physical presence, but it doesn't end relationship. You can still process, still heal, still receive what you needed from them through memory, through wisdom, through your own knowing. Don't let their absence prevent your peace. Stay open, stay willing, stay healing. They want you to know something. Listen. Bye, Virgo. Take care.